Good. Welcome to Palm Sunday. I hope you're doing well. We're going to have some fun as we continue our series called Knockout, or as it's paraphrased, KO. We've been talking about spiritual battle, the battle that you can't see. We've got a ton of ground to make, so I need you to open up your Bibles right away to 1 Samuel chapter 17. 1 Samuel chapter, some of you guys know what that story is. I heard the audible. We're going to be working through David and Goliath, the famous story, and connecting it to the triumphal entry of Jesus, which is the beginning of the Easter week, traditionally. Now, in this story, we're going to see a physical battle take place. But really, this series isn't about a physical battle. And what we're doing today is we're going to take a physical battle, which many of you will face, physical battles all over your life. And it may not be an actual war. It may not be even a fight that involves your hands, but you are facing physical things in your life. You're facing challenges and circumstances. And we want to give you some principles. Today, the title of my message is The Blueprint for the Battle. The Blueprint for the Battle. What we're going to do is we're going to unpack several principles that come out of this great battle between David and Goliath. And then ultimately, really at the end, I'm going to tell you in advance, we're going to flip the script on the story and really give you the foundational reason why this story is significant in the life of Christianity. All right? We're going to do all that and still get you to lunch. 1 Samuel chapter 17, you there? All right, David and Goliath. We're going to jump right into the text. A champion, verse 4, named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. That's tall, isn't it? You don't know. You don't know what that is. That's 9 feet, 9 inches tall. That's like Shaq plus a baby. Imagine like a toddler standing on top of Shaq's head, right? Holding his hands. That's the size of this giant. I mean, when you begin to think about that, and then you think about, hey, I got to fight this guy, you can begin to see the overwhelming just sense that the Israelites had, like, this is not going to go well. Watch how this plays out. Normally, the Philistines and the Israelites, they're like an epic rivalry. Maybe the most famous Old Testament rivalry is the Philistines and the Israelites. Okay, some of you are like, I don't understand what that means. Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees. Los Angeles Dodgers, San Diego Padres. And I know you're thinking like, well, the Padres never win, so that's not a rivalry. Yeah, but the Padres also don't sign people that get into betting scandals. So, verse 5, before I get in trouble. An epic rivalry is taking place. Goliath's a 9-foot-tall giant. The Israelites, God's chosen nation, we're going to unpack that in a second, is in serious trouble. Here's why. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. That's 125 pounds of armor. Okay? I carry around mom weights for 10 minutes and I'm tired. So this is a massive man that can handle a massive amount of armor because he, as the kids say, is built different, okay? On his legs, he wore bronze greaves. And a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. So just the end of his spear weighed 15 pounds. And he would carry it around, and ultimately that was his weapon of choice. His shield bearer went ahead of him. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? Are you not the servants of Saul?" Saul's the current anointed king. Okay, we're going to enter into a point in the story where there's a transition taking place between King Saul and King David. King Saul's the first king. He's picked because of how he looks. He's picked because he looks like he should be a king. And after all, the Israelites are knuckleheads, and they don't really understand what's really important about a king. And so they go, oh, that guy looks great. And so God says, fine, that guy does look great. You can have him. Because I want to actually show you a greater message about what you value the most. And you're going to see that we as humans value what we see the most. We determine our circumstances and the state of our circumstances off what we can see. It's why Saul is chosen as king, and it's why the Israelites are about to be scared in the battle. It's because we place too much stock in what our eyes tell us. Now, I want you to see how this thing flips. Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he's able to fight me, verse 9, and we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. Here's the concept. The concept is they used to, or traditional battle is your army, my army. But the Philistines have a new idea, which makes sense when you have a 9-foot tall giant. You pick one, I pick one, they fight. Winner takes all. We're placing all our chips on one fight. Throw it into the middle of the table. It's the first ever UFC fight. Goliath, representing the Philistines. And question mark, who will represent the Israelites? Well, as the story goes, you're going to find out that none of the trained soldiers, including the king himself, will step out for battle. It becomes an issue. This day, the Philistines said, this day I defy the armies of Israel. Verse 10, give me a man and let us fight each other. On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and the Israelites were dismayed and what? Terrified. Can I just tell you, it's very hard to win in whatever you face if you are dismayed and terrified. Tell a story, my bear story, and then I'll read you a better bear story. My bear story is when I was a kid at camp. I was at Forest Home, and I was a 9th grader. I wanted to hang out with the 10th graders, right? So cabin to cabin, I'd run back and forth. I'd try to be with my peers, but then also you guys aren't invited. I'm going to the 10th grade camp. They don't like you as much as me. Not a big deal. So I'm going back and forth between the cabins, okay? And I open up the cabin door, and from me to about the front row is a massive bear. And he's getting into something, and I startle him from the door opening. And he gets up on his hind legs and turns towards me, and I just freeze. So I don't know how long it was, but all I know is what saved my life is somebody that wasn't dismayed and terrified, at least to the level I was, because I was paralyzed with fear. And I quite literally could have been physically injured and or killed in this moment because I was dismayed and terrified in this moment. You typically don't know what to do if you're paralyzed with fear. Thank goodness somebody behind me came and slammed the door and said, "What the heck are you doing?" And I couldn't answer it. I was, in that moment, overwhelmed by what stood in front of me. I wonder, obviously not a bear or a 9-foot tall giant, but I wonder how many people walk in today overwhelmed and as a result of what you face in your life, you're dismayed and or terrified, and as a result, you're paralyzed in how to approach whatever it is that's standing in front of you. And I want to step back from that. Not to invalidate what you're facing and the real fear that surrounds it, but just to remind you that that fear may be standing in the way of how you win this fight. Because people who are overwhelmed with fear typically don't have the logical, rational, and spiritual things necessary to conquer whatever it is that's standing in front of them. If that's you, lean in today, because there is a blueprint for the battle. Now, David, verse 12 will go on to unpack who David is and introduce us in this story to him and who he is and his family's origin, because the truth is, he's the youngest son. He's the most physically immature. He's not even a trained soldier like his brothers are. And so he's going to step off of the hill of battle and begin to see what's going on. All this commotion of this giant mocking the God of Israel, mocking the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. And the Israelites scared out of their mind, terrified. The king himself won't even face him. So Israel's in a bad state. It's in a bad place. And this is happening over and over and over again. Look at verse 16. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. Here's what I want to show you. In Hebrew culture, you heard me say this a couple weeks ago, but I'm going to lean into it again. Numbers mean a significant thing. For example, the number 40 in this is 40 days of mocking. And the number 40 represents a test and or a trial where new life comes out of it. Ladies who have kids, how long were you pregnant? 40 weeks. But who's counting, right? 40 weeks, a testing and a trial, and new life comes out of it. How long was the Israelites in the desert wandering? 40 years, a testing and a trial with new life emerging. So this theme happens over and over. How long was Jesus tempted? 40 days, a testing and a trial, a new ministry emerges. And so we're going to just put this on here just so we don't remember, because this is significant to the story. 40. What is the blueprint for our battle? How do we cross the principalizing bridge of the Israelites and the Philistine, none of which cultures I'm directly affiliated with, in a real physical war? And how does that have anything to do with what I'm facing? As we unpack this, one of the things that I want you to see is that we are in a season of a testing and trial. We're in the age of the Spirit. There is a covenant that Abraham's going to refer back to over and over and over again. It's called the Abrahamic covenant. And the Abrahamic covenant is something that was given to who? Abraham. You guys are paying attention. Good job. Okay. It was given to Abraham. And the idea is that there would be a people and there would be a land, Israel and Israelites. And ultimately, the primary purpose for the covenant was through the land and through the people, we would get a Messiah. And they're waiting for that Messiah to come. But in that, they're experiencing a wide range of testing and trials, ultimately for the Messiah to give new life and new ministry. And ultimately, what we will experience in the new covenant. So that's what's all unpacking. That's the background as best as I can do in a short amount of time. That's going to color in this story, and it's where David's going to get his confidence while everybody else is scared. Watch this. Ooh, table there. For 40 days, the Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. Jump all the way down to verse 26. As David comes off the hill, unqualified soldier, inexperienced, the last guy you would think that would fight the giant. David asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that should defy the armies of the living God?" Now, if you're new to church, you're like, whoa, TMI, David. How is that relevant to this battle? It's very relevant if you understand the covenant. Because the covenant in Israel was signified by male circumcision. And the picture was that they were cut off from the rest of the world. They were to be set apart. And so when he references the uncircumcised Philistine, he's saying he's not in the covenant with the God of Abraham. He does not have the promises that we have because of what God told Abraham. We have a land, we have a people, but we have yet to receive the Messiah. So what God has promised has not been fulfilled. So I stand confident knowing this uncircumcised Philistine doesn't have the promise I have. That's where David steps into this moment. But it's a testing and a trial. You can either see the test and the trial, or you can lean on the covenant. David leans on the promise given to the Israelites generations before him. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that should defy the armies of the living God? He's saying that the God who gave Abraham the covenant is still alive. He's present in this moment. He's available to me, and he will deliver me from the giant. He enters into the conversation almost ignorant to the giant in front of him because all his faith is in the God that's been there for him and the God that's been promised to him. He's alive and he's here. While everybody else is worried about the size of the giant, his faith is all in the promises of God. They repeated to him, verse 27, what they had been saying and told him, this is what will be done for the man who kills him. When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. Let me get this straight, Eliab. Your beef is with your brother who left his sheep while you've been here being mocked and allowed your nation to be mocked day after day after day, and you're worried about your brother's sheep? Let me just tell you, one of the quickest ways to lose the battle that you're facing is to worry about somebody else's problem. It's to judge other people for what they've been given stewardship over and not manage what God has given you stewardship over. The enemy loves when that happens because you've already lost. You have been entrusted a variety of things, time, some level of a medium of exchange that we call money, relationships, and influence. And when we get judgmental about somebody else's choices and don't manage ours properly, we've already lost the battle we're in because we're worried about somebody else's, which we will not give an account for. So here's just a reminder of a soldier who's fighting in God's army who won't fight the giant because he's worried about somebody else. Now, verse 29, what have I done? Said David. Can I even speak? He dismisses his oldest brother. He then turned away to someone else and brought up the matter. And the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. So here's what's happening. David gets dismissed by his own family. Can I just tell you, there's going to be times when you stand with integrity, right, fighting for the things of God, and there are going to be people in your own bloodline that dismiss you. And if you allow for their dismissal to impact your faithfulness, you will not win the battle. David dismisses it. He doesn't dismiss God, he dismisses the criticism from his brother. Because his confidence isn't in the opinion of anybody else, even his oldest brother. David's confidence is in something so much greater. And so don't miss all the little details of this because it does give you a blueprint for whatever it is you're facing. But so Saul sends for him. Watch this. Saul replied, verse 32. 33, Saul comes in. David said to Saul, let no one lose heart on the account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. Saul replied, you're not able to go up against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. Again, not only does his brother dismiss him, the king of the nation dismisses him. What I love about David is David is not really worried about anybody in the story. David is only worried about what God has promised to the nation, what God has established in his covenant. Listen to this. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from its mouth, I went after it. So he may not be a trained soldier, but he's got a little gangster in him. This shepherd isn't your everyday shepherd, because an everyday shepherd is like, one sheep gone. Many sheep still here. I'll take care of the sheep that are still here. But even that is a picture of God. God, off into the wilderness with those that attack us, fighting for us, chasing after us, in pursuit of us. David leaning on the past. He draws from these stories in a chaotic moment where everybody else is scared of God's faithfulness to him. Watch how he not only illuminates this. I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, oh, what a story. If I ever fought a bear or ever fought a lion, I just saw one and told a story. If I ever fought a bear, if I ever fought a lion, every party that I attended from that day forward, I would be telling that mug. Everyone. Be like, hey, how's your week? I don't know, a couple years ago, fought a lion, not a big deal. Right? My wife tries to bring up something like, forgot my keys in my car or something like, I killed a bear. Get over it. You know, like this is all I'd be leaning into for the rest of my life. And for him, he just tells it because of ultimately what God proved in it. And so it comes off with such humility, victory and humility, victory and humility. Baked together, verse 36, your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of the Philistine. You want to know how to fight the battle in front of you? Remember how God was faithful behind you. Oh, what a principle. Oh, what a powerful reminder. You face some stuff today, but you've been through some things in your life. And God has seen you through it. God has been with you in it. And God has secured your future despite your choices. This is a powerful reminder as David looks at the giant in front of him, not overwhelmed by his size or his girth or his strength or the problem that exists right there. Instead, all of his faith in the God that's been faithful behind him. Still right here. I love Saul's response. It's kind of like a text message. We're not exactly sure what he means by this, but this is the way I read it. Saul said to David, "Go and the Lord be with you." Like, you know what, honestly, if I was like drafting in the first round right now, you're not my top pick, but we're in like the 40th round right now and nobody's gotten picked. And so you're coming off the hill and you've got the courage. So if nothing else, you've got the courage. Can you imagine being the Israelites and they're all looking, you're going to find, I'm not, dude, I've got like a rotator cuff thing, probably need some Tommy John surgery, Somebody else is like, oh, I got COVID. So everybody's trying to get out of this fight. And Saul's like, all right, let's go. Go for it. The Lord be with you. Watch how this unpacks. The blueprint for the battle. Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over his tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I am not used to them. So he took them off. If you have a physical Bible or an electronic Bible, circle, highlight, underline. So he took them off. It's time for us as we fight battles we cannot see to realize the spiritual battle is not won in the physical realm. We cannot place our faith in man-made strategies. That means that the solution to your marriage may not be 10 steps to a successful marriage. The solution to your relational challenges may not be a book that says 5 quick, easy moments for you to get your relationships back. Sure, is there wisdom in that? Absolutely. Is there wisdom when we apply it to our lives, we get different results? Yes. But the great the great battles of your life are not physical. They're absolutely spiritual. And if you are trying to fight all of your battles with conventional wisdom from what your eyes can see, you will miss the greater story that's at play. And it's the spiritual battle that you cannot see. David understood this. That's why David, can you imagine this moment? All the Israelites are like, who's going to fight? Who's going to fight? All of the rumors. It's David. Who's David? He's not even a soldier. He's not a soldier? No, he's a shepherd. A shepherd's fighting the giant? Yeah. Where is he? He's over there. And he's walking around. Clink, 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 clink. Like that kid's voice still screeches. He's like a teenage boy. We're screwed. That's the rumor going around. We're done. This is not good. He's not even a third stringer. He's not even on the practice squad. He's walking out of the stands into the stadium. He can't fight the... Will you fight? No, I'm not. I told you my shoulder. So just lean into this moment because so much is happening so quickly. I cannot go in these. So he took them off. Verse 40, then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, with a sling in his hand, approached the Philistine. So you mean to tell me, not only is he not going to put on some armor, he's not going to wear Saul's armor, he's not going to wear any armor, and on top of that, he's going to take a couple stones? That's like bringing a knife to a gunfight. What are you going to do with stones? Show them how you can skip rocks? Oh, goodness. What is happening? If you look with your eyes, that's the question you ask. But if you're connected to the living God, you can begin to see that a miracle is about to take place. Something's happening behind the scenes in the spiritual realm. Something's happening with the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. The living God's here. And David, anointed, is already anointed to be king. He does not yet have the crown. He's got the promises of God. 2 of the 3 have been fulfilled. We're waiting on the last one. And yet the full weight and the payoff that comes with those promises, he's in the gap of both of them, placing his faith not in what he can see, but on the God that has come before him, that he will deliver him from the giant that stands in front of him. Oh, don't miss that. Because if you miss this, you may miss the blueprint for your battle. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer, verse 41, the shield bearer in front of him kept coming closer to David. I love this detail. If you don't read your Bible, you need to start reading it. It's funny. He looked David over and saw that he was a little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome. Let me understand this. Hold on. This is like a massive fight. This is for the nation. They're about to be enslaved. One of the 2 nations are going to be enslaved by the other. And this story decides that David charges Goliath. Goliath charges David. He's like, huh, you're really small, but not bad to look at. This is one when I walk with Jesus, be like, hey, Jesus, I know we're going to spend a couple days on all my mistakes. I get it. We're going to have this conversation with grace and love. You're going to give me a hug at the end of it. Can I get just one question at the end of it? Why did David's looks have anything to do with the fight in 1 Samuel chapter 17? That's just an interesting question to me. But nonetheless, the scriptures wanted us to know David's kind of a stud. He may be young, but he's a shepherd, and he's got a good jawline. I'm just telling you, you got to read your Bible. It's got fun stuff like this all over it. End of that verse. And he despised him. This is Goliath to David. He said to David, am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? And the Philistines cursed David by his gods. Don't get that twisted. In the scriptures, it's lowercase, because there is only one God. But the Philistines worship somebody else. They place their faith in somebody else. And when you place your faith in somebody else and it comes against the God, the capital G God, every single time the little gods lose. The little gods that we worship in our lives cannot deliver what is promised. The reason David has faith is because God always delivers on his promises. And it's interesting because as we lean into verse 43, it says, and the Philistines cursed David by his gods. Come here, he said, and I'll give you your flesh to the birds and the wild animals. If you like a little bit of trash talk, right? If you like a little banter back and forth, that's what's about to happen. Before they ever physically fight, they verbally jab back and forth. Like any great battle, the Philistine Goliath starts. Oh, I'm going to feed you the wild animals. And this handsome young buck that stands in front of him is going to respond. Watch this. Because if you like some trash talk, David gives it to him. He's like an elite. Don't believe me. Watch this. Verse 43. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you had defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you dead and cut off your head. Gangster trash talk right there. I don't care if you're in Israel or you're in Compton. That's some gangster trash talk. I will cut off your head. What? It's at this point that if I'm in the crowd and I'm the trained soldier and I'm scared that we're about to lose, I'm like, we may have a shot. We may got a shot. This kid's crazy. This kid is certified out of his mind. I will cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals. I love that he responds with what he says to him. Oh, you're going to give my body? No, I'm cutting your head off. Your big, goofy head is going to the animals. It's bigger than my whole body, but I'm cutting it off. And you know what's interesting? David doesn't have a sword. None of those stones are slicing off that head, which you're going to see. His faith isn't in what he has. His faith is in the God that's promised that he's going to deliver a Messiah, and this is what's standing in front of that moment. This day, the Lord, all the way middle of 46, and the world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's. And it will give all of you into our hands. As the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. Oh, when I get to heaven, I'm renting this one from Netflix. I don't know if Netflix is in heaven, but I'm renting this one. And this scene's in slow motion. Can you imagine? Whew. He got 5 stones. He only needed 1. Whew. Boom! And if you're the Philistines, you're not even fazed by a little stone coming at your 9-foot-tall giant's head. You're like, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. He's going to be fine. You've seen Goliath. Guy's a stud. A small stone is going to knock him over. Watch. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. And I would imagine that everybody standing around him experienced like a 4.4 earthquake. Boom! What just happened? So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, not plural, stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword, drew it from the sheath. After he killed him, he cut his head off. This is how I see it. I don't know. This is why I want to watch the movie. I want to see if my images in my head are wrong, but just picks up that big old goofy head, looks at the Philistines like, ah! And I think he probably looks right back at the army, finds his brother. Ah! Then he looks over at Saul. Ah! Every one of you that doubted me. God has delivered the giant. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and they ran. This is the blueprint for the battle. I'll give you a couple things. Number 1, if you're taking notes, meditate on God's faithfulness and share your story as often as you can. I gave you a couple of Psalms there, but I want you to know that David that's fighting this battle, we're going to get much more into his life. We actually get his highs and his lows, but one of the things that he displays to us, probably better than anybody else in all the Scripture, is an intimate, honest relationship with God, where he'll meditate on the things that that God has been faithful for, and even bring up the things that he's struggling with in the battle that he faces. A young David does not panic in this story, but an older David, when he gets into trouble, there's moments where we get insight into his struggle. The book of Psalms is all capturing these different songs crying out to God, some of which are about joy, and some of which are about depression, and others of which are about feeling overwhelmed and anxiety, and the list goes on and on and on. What brings David back to faithfulness is remembering what God has done in his story. And I would just tell you that that's going to be a blueprint for your battle. This is going to be said over and over and over again. Remember. When you and I remember the things that God has said, when we remember the things that God has done, we begin to experience a confidence and a faith that is far greater than the giant in front of us. Number 2, let your confidence and your courage come from God's promise, not somebody else's armor. What you need to face the giant in your life is likely not something you can see. If it's a battle you can't see, then you can't use anything you can see to come against it. You're going to really need to rely on the God that made you, fastened you, shaped you, pursued you, and saved you. Right? That is going to build the confidence. And as you rely on him, right, he's been faithful. The question is, will you be? Second Chronicles will say that the eyes of the Lord is searching for those who will be faithful to him. And for those who will be faithful, he will see them through. And when it's said that, it's actually in a negative context because the Israelites were not being faithful. So we need to remember, we need to be faithful. There's people in your life that you're going through something and they've got advice for you, and it's terrible advice because it's worldly advice. And they're asking you to compromise your integrity. They're asking you to just a little bit do something that will ultimately get you where you need to go quicker, and you'll stop be dealing with all of the challenges you face. And I just remind you that this life is filled with testing and trials, but in the testing and the trial, there is new life. If you do it God's way, you'll experience God's results. If you do it the world's way, you'll experience the world's results. The world cannot deliver. The lowercase gods cannot deliver on what they promised. Only God is faithful to what he says. Remember, be faithful. Number 3, God trusted David with a moment of glory. He knew that David, a mere shepherd, coming off the hills, he knew that he would give God all the glory. You see that David had a level of integrity. You want to fight your battle? You're going to have to maintain integrity. And if you have the integrity, and you have a faithfulness, and you have a discipline of remembering the things that God has done in you, then God is saying, I will deliver you. That is the promise. I will complete what I started. I will finish what I'm up to. I always do, and I always will. And I realize that your eyes see something far greater than you're equipped for. I realize that your eyes see something that's overwhelming you, that's filling you with fear, that's terrifying you. And I'm just calling you back to a couple ideas that will take your eyes off the giant and onto God. And I would just say that the size of your giant is far less important than the size of your God. It's him that will be faithful. It's him that will see you through. But the eyes of the Lord search for those who will be faithful. Last thing I want to talk about, and that is we are not David in the story. We can learn principles from David, but he's a Jesus-like figure. In fact, we take now the David and Goliath story, we enter into what we're celebrating today on Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday is this interesting story that begins the Easter journey, and it starts, so all of the Israelites, right, are waiting for the Messiah. So this story happens, they've got the land, they've got the people, and yet they go through trial after trial after trial. They've been enslaved by other nations. They're waiting for the Messiah to come. And in that angst and in the generational frustration of wanting to see all the things that they've been told, all the things that Abraham grabbed a hold of, they want to see it come to pass in such a powerful way. But remember, they've got the promises. They don't have the full payoff yet. And in that angst, they get impatient. They lose integrity. They forget. they're not faithful, and God continues to pursue them over and over and over again. Eventually, they deliver a Messiah. The people had created their own Messiah, and so they nearly missed the real one. And Jesus shows up. And all the angst, and all the generational frustration, he shows up on the scene, and he's about to come into Jerusalem. This is the moment where the Messiah is going to establish his reign, and they expect him to come on a white horse with a giant sword, with glistening hair, and deliver him from the Romans. And Jesus says to his disciples, go get me a donkey. What? What? But Jesus is showing a new reign. Jesus is taking their eyes off of what they think is real and showing them what matters the most. My power isn't reliant on what I ride in on. My power is what's within me. So he gets on the donkey and he's coming into a massive crowd. They've all got these palm branches. And they're waving these palm branches. Palm branches are a symbol of victory. And they're screaming, Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest, declaring the Messiah has come. They're laying the palm branches for the donkey to walk over, not because the donkey is of any significance, but because the one who is on the donkey is the fulfillment of the promise. We've had the land, we've had the people, and now we have a Messiah. And that Messiah has already declared not the Abrahamic covenant, but the new covenant. By faith in him, you could be with him forever. Your past paid for. Your future is secure. And that access to the kingdom is available to you now. Not just the access to the kingdom, but the access to the king. All of it. Through faith in me. You enter into the covenant. So our covenant's different than the one that David was standing in. But the one that David stood in fulfilled ours. And now, established in a new covenant, I enter into your battle. And we take the principles of this story, realizing that we can remember we need to be faithful and we need to live out integrity. And the testing and the trial will give birth to new ministry and new life if we can show ourselves faithful in the end. And yet, the reason we can be is because in the covenant, after the triumphal entry, Jesus will go to the cross. And he'll pay the price for our sins and buy us back to God in that moment, only to be resurrected again, is what we're celebrating next Easter, and give us the life that we didn't deserve. So we can now declare to everybody else that through faith in Jesus, we have a new covenant. I know you got some giants. Let me tell you about a new covenant. I know you got some problems. Let me tell you about a new covenant. I know you've got some things standing in your way. I know you're overwhelmed. I know you're dismayed. I know you're terrified. I know you've been paralyzed. But I know the King. I know the King. And his kingdom is coming. His kingdom is here. And we can rely not on the challenges in front of us, but on the victory that stands behind us. Hosanna. Hosanna. Hosanna in the highest. Victory is here. Victory is yours. Not because of what you've done, but because of what he did. Let's pray. God, thanks. What a powerful picture of you on the donkey. I'm so interested to think what the crowd was saying. The murmurs, the rumors. And then as you traveled into the city, the great city of Jerusalem, to be just overwhelmed with this moment in time, to feel so deeply that you are here. The victory is ours. God, for many of us in the room today, we're not singing these worship songs because we believe them. We're singing them because we need to believe them. that we walk in here in a season of grief, in a season of pain, in a season of frustration, a season of angst. We've got our concerns on what we're in. We're distracted by so many things around us, Lord, and we come back to this promise that you gave to us with Jesus in the new covenant. It's our faith in you that empowers us to be a son and daughter of the Most High God. That we are not what we've done, we are not where we've been, we're not what we've said, we're not what we've thought. That God, you, Jesus, have given us a new identity, and we stand firm and confident in that because we believe what you say. You've given us a new purpose, a new home, a new family, a new father, a new king, and a new kingdom. Our confidence is in the promise. And yet, much like David, God, we haven't experienced the full payoff of that. Heaven is coming, a place with no more tears and no more pain and no more trial. But in the testing and in the trial, as you give birth to new life and new ministry, we ask that you would allow us to be faithful in this season. Will you encourage those who are broken? Will you convict those who are living in sin? Will you equip those who are in desperation of equipping? Will you grow those who are in desperate need of growth for the battle that stands in front of them? You will show yourself faithful. We can reflect on our stories and see it. We can reflect on your truth and experience it. We stand in the gap, the promise and the payoff, and ask for you to fill this room with faith. Will you fill this room with faith? For it is faith that activates your power. And your power is what we need. In Jesus' name.